Hello, everyone, and welcome to HBCU Highlights, where we spotlight amazing HBCU graduates, and we tell the stories of what they're doing now and what they're doing in their community, and most importantly, their journeys to college. And I'm here with my co-host, Ashley Deadweiler-Jones, and we are so excited to welcome our classmate, class of 98, Morehouse alum, Dr. Eric Tait. Now, Dr. Eric Tait is a medical doctor. He's an internist, but he's kind of an internist with a twist, I like to say, because he owns a private equity firm, Vernonville. So we're going to talk about why he chose Morehouse College, what he's doing. You're going to be amazed. So Dr. Eric Tait, welcome to HBCU Highlights. We are so happy to have you here.
No, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm glad I got the call. I see you guys blowing up online in our different Facebook groups, and just appreciate you all highlighting people who are doing positive things, highlighting HBCUs, because in this current time where we are, we really, really need kind of positive stories and positive outlets where younger people can realize that there are places in the world that will celebrate them and not just tolerate them.
All right. Well, we're celebrating you today. And I want to know why you chose Morehouse College. So 1994, you're so excited, you're graduating from high school, and you decide to go to Morehouse. Why did you decide to go to Morehouse College?
So interestingly, we're an HBCU family. So Hampton, Howard, Morehouse, Spelman are, at least on my mother's side of the family, are just kind of the traditional schools that we have gone to. And I knew that I wanted to be a doctor back when I was very young. And one of my uncles had graduated from Morehouse back in '61 and was an oral surgeon down in Savannah, Georgia. So interestingly enough, Morehouse was the only application I finished. My middle sister had gone to Spelman. She's 10 years ahead of me. And my elder sister had gone to Howard. And really, I hadn't seen Morehouse until I stepped on campus for orientation, because when my middle sister graduated, I was sick. And so I stayed in the hotel the whole time. So pretty much Morehouse was kind of destined for me since, my parents and my sister like to say, my parents kind of brainwashed me into this pathway. So here I am.
So did your parents brainwash you toward Morehouse? Because I'm sure you probably could have got into any of our illustrious HBCUs. What was it about Morehouse, and what major did you decide to pursue while you were at Morehouse?
Yeah, so interesting. My dad kind of had a bitter taste in his mouth from Howard, from my elder sister, just kind of an administrative thing. And so essentially Morehouse had a clean slate. So he wasn't really complaining one way or the other. I got recruited heavily by the Ivy Leagues, but that just wasn't really for me. To me, Morehouse is the capital of Black male achievement. There's no other institution created to do what it does, mission-wise, on the planet. And so for me, that it was just a natural fit in terms of kind of who I saw myself and who I saw myself becoming from that standpoint. So I wanted to be a part of that kind of illustrious brotherhood, even though, as a high school student, you really don't get it. And I'll be honest with you, even as an undergraduate, oftentimes you don't get it. It's not until you're an alum and you're out in the world that it really seeps in kind of whose footsteps you followed through and are walking in as you move forward.
So what did you major in at Morehouse?
Oh, sorry. I was a biology major. So I did the easy, I tell people I did the easy pathway, right? At the time we were there during the mid 90s, Morehouse put more Black males into medical school than any other school. So literally you just show up on campus, go to the health career society, say you want to be a doctor, and they lay the path out for you. They give you your classes. They tell you what summer programs you should be going to. They tell you which schools heavily recruit Morehouse students, and they literally lay the path out. I tell people it's literally the easiest path I ever took. All I had to do was just pay attention and study. But there was no question as to what the pathway was to achieving that dream.
Well, Eric, you make it sound easy now. Morehouse laid it out for you, and the pathway, I'm glad, was easy, but I know it was hard work. But why did you want to be a doctor in the first place? Because it's very rare to know what you want to do when you go to college, but it sounds like you had your heart set on becoming a doctor, and you are a doctor.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those things, right? I mean, it's easy to dream the things that you can already see, right? It's easy. If you look at it from a generational standpoint, I'm technically a fourth generation physician. My great grandfather was a physician. My great uncle was a physician. My uncle was a physician. So every level down, we had a physician in the family, right? And so it wasn't something that was foreign. All it really, I tell people all the time, it doesn't take a ton of intelligence. What it takes is massive discipline, right? And so, and I will say that is hard in HBCU sometimes, especially in Atlanta during the 90s, but it really was more discipline than it was sheer brain power. Because the dirty little secret about medical school is a ton of rote memorization that you're just regurgitating back to be able to get in. And that, I can teach a monkey to do that. It's the discipline, though, to go through the steps and the delayed gratification. So yes, we absolutely worked hard, but I'm going to tell you, Morehouse made it so easy to know exactly what needed to be done. When I talk to people who went to other schools, especially Black students, especially big white institutions, it was almost like them trying to figure out a puzzle as to what it looks like to try to get into medical school and what that pathway looks like. And so looking back, when I juxtapose it with other colleagues that I had, like literally, I thank Morehouse every day. I thank Dean Blocker. I thank some of our classmates that were my classmates that I studied with, because it was almost a fait accompli once you stepped on campus and decided that, okay, you're going to do this. You had no excuse not to be able to do it, because it literally, you're watching 40 and 50 guys a year go that pathway at the time. So I really thank Morehouse for laying that pathway out and showing me the type of discipline it was going to take to ultimately finish that goal.
Eric, I'm sitting here taking notes, okay? Because capital of Black male achievement. Now that's how I'll refer to Morehouse from now on, because that is all I see and that's all I know. So thank you for those words. Now, coming from the capital of Black male achievement, clearly you can do whatever it is that you set your eye on. So now, not only have you gone to medical school, but you have gone and launched your own private equity firm. Can you talk to us about how that transition occurred and tell us a lot more about your firm?
So that's interesting, right? So I've always been an entrepreneur. I've always been a hustler, even as a young child, right? And so, those of you all that remember me from freshman year will remember that in Thurman Hall, my roommate Sarkis and I, we ran our own store and kind of barbershop. So we called it Cold and Cuts. So we would make sandwiches, we would cut hair. I mean, we literally ran a business out of our dorm room freshman year. And a lot of people didn't even realize that I was a biology major and that I was going to medical school through college, right? And so interestingly enough, the medical school I went to, Baylor College of Medicine in Houston, when I was a sophomore, there were 2 Morehouse students who were there already. And they came back to the school to recruit. And they let us know that they were setting up a dual degree MD, M.B.A. program between Rice University and Baylor College of Medicine. So then I knew, because I had done research at Penn for a couple of summers, I knew that I wanted to do a dual degree MD, M.B.A. program. And so I chose to come to Houston to go to those 2 schools, knowing that they were setting that program up. I probably wouldn't have to take the GMAT, and I would be able to get both degrees, the business degree and the medical degree, in 5 years' time. And so it was a little bit of strategic kind of planning to do it. But again, because I was at Morehouse, because so many students went to this medical school, I knew early on what they were setting up. And so it was a natural progression for me once I graduated, started practicing, that I was going to do some investing. And so in business school, I decided I didn't want to invest in the stock market at all. So I'm not a public markets guy, right? And so, before the firm started, where we were bringing in other investors, it was literally just me investing my wife and I and our family's money ourselves for many years. And then we had a lot of our physician colleagues who were like, hey, we want to invest with you. What does that look like? And from that point, we stopped doing kind of smaller projects, single family homes, small apartments, and started going into hotels, large apartments, large retail centers, light industrial centers, building student housing, buying, income producing farmland. And so for us, the way I've set this company up is we want to be the kind of private investment, alternative investment vehicle of choice for busy professionals. Like, we have a ton of physician investors, but we have a ton of investors who are not physicians. They're just literally just busy professionals. And quietly, we have a good number of our classmates who've invested with us as well. And so if you're talking about the stock market, that's not us. But if you want things outside of the stock market that don't have the same kind of volatility or run on a different kind of pathway, that's what our investment firm does.
Hey, well, Eric, they say wealth is health and health is wealth. So I guess if you think about it that way, it's a natural progression, but it is very different, to go from what someone would think of saying, look, you're already a doctor and now you're starting this private equity firm. So most people only know about stocks and only know about the stock market and those types of investments. So can you tell us more specifically about what those investments are and what's the minimum that someone would need to invest in something like this?
Oh, okay. Well, I'll take the time to do the full commercial. Like a good lawyer, it depends, right? That's a degree I don't have, but it really does depend. So the way I always talk to investors or potential investors is figure out what you're trying to accomplish financially first, right? From a strategic standpoint. Some people want to retire early. Some people want to be able to cut back. Some people want different income streams. Some people want diversification outside of just being 100% in the publicly traded markets. So we always start first there, right? Because I always tell people, we're going to do what we're going to do. In the end, we're just trying to find people whose investment philosophy lines up with us. So let's just take the real estate side of things. We do a lot of income producing real estate projects. So like I said, apartments, retail, all of those kinds of things. Minimum investments tend to be ideally 50,000, but we'll go as low as 25,000 depending on the project, and up to 100,000 depending on where people ultimately are. And that is owning a direct piece of essentially an LLC that owns the asset. So you're an equity member, you get all the tax benefits, the tax flow throughs go to you, you get what's called a K-1 at the end of the tax year. And so you literally are an equity partner in potentially a kind of large real estate project. We also do some angel kind of venture capital investing, and that is pre-IPO companies, oftentimes that have been already vetted or already invested by larger venture firms. Because of our relationships, we're able to get what's called an allocation. So we'll get a couple $100,000 in a high-flying either tech company or something like that. And because that's a little bit more risky, we lower the minimum threshold for investments for those to about 11,000 to start with, just to allow people to get access. Because historically, we as African Americans, we as people of color, women investors do not get access to pre-IPO kind of technology companies. And so I literally became a founder of a venture firm with 3 other African American men whose mission it is to bring what we call non-traditional investors into that space. And then lastly, we're also doing some debt, so private notes, private bond situation where we're lending into peer groups or we're lending against real estate, which creates an income stream for people, but not with the same kind of equity risk. And so with that one, it's just kind of a flat investment, anywhere from 10,500 up to 25,000 minimum, depending on the amount of interest you want to accrue and how long you want to kind of hold those notes for. And so anywhere from 10 to 11,000 for venture and notes, 25 to 50,000 for the bigger real estate deals, to kind of make it concise.
Wow, you caught all my attention and a lot of attention. Anytime you start talking about making money, you got my attention. So I'm certainly going to be looking forward to learning more about your private equity firm, and I know many more will as well. Now, it sounds like you have a very busy schedule. You're a medical doctor, you are head of a private equity firm, you got a lot going on, but I do believe you also have and found time to give back in the community. Can you talk to us about some of the things or projects that you've worked on and how you're giving back to your local community?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually this all ties back in, right? And so what I want to do is circle back, because I've always felt that the third wave or the last wave of civil rights is going to be our economic independence, right? It's great that we can sit next to white folks. It's great that we can eat at their lunch counters. It's great that we can go to their schools, right? And so we can create political power, but without economic might, you cannot defend your political power. And that's what we're seeing right now through all of this, right? Yes, we have the right to do this. We are still getting abused in the streets. We are still not getting loans. We are still being left behind economically. And so one of the big reasons why I created the investment firm was that we need more people of color aggregating capital. Now, all the capital doesn't have to come from Black people, but Black people need to be the head of these firms that are then putting these dollars into our communities, not as a charity, but as a way to stimulate the community, but still make money, right? Using capitalism to create capital to lift our community. And so for me, my investment firm is mission-based. Yeah, we make money. Yeah, we send checks out to people. But ultimately, if you look at where we invest and who we invest with, there's an undercurrent there that if you're paying attention, you'll see something. I may not overtly say it, but if you pay attention, you'll see, right? And so what I'm attempting to do, whether it be through the investment firm, whether it be through some of the time that I spend with kind of the local Morehouse alumni chapter, I'm very active in an organization called KeyPack, which is a young Black professional. Well, I guess we're not quite so young anymore, but when we started it, young Black professional pack that we've been doing here in Houston for 15 years, where many of our members have gone on to hold city council. We've helped to elect some of our classmates. Well, no, actually, no, she's not our classmate, but some Morehouse and Spelman people to city council here in Houston, where we are trying to create infrastructure, right? Ultimately, in the end, we're essentially rebuilding the infrastructure that we lost post-integration. And so we have to rebuild these parallel structures in concert with allies where we're the head of them, but they will survive the cult of personality. And so if you look at how I spend my time, whether it be like I talked about with KeyPack, we also, I also spend my time in an organization called Steaks and Stogies, which is for professional African-American men. We have a chapter here in Houston. We have a chapter in DC where we meet 3 times a year, where brothers can come in, drop their ego, because we all got degrees, we all got money, nobody cares about that. What we want to know is, where are you struggling? Where are you having an issue? Where can we help one another? And then we bring political figures in, we bring economic figures in. We're gonna have a town hall this coming week with Michael Blake. We're supporting him. He's running in New York and the Bronx for a congressional seat, but he's also vice chair of the Democratic National Committee. So we're gonna talk to him around this George Floyd issue. We're gonna talk to him around how do we create planks within the Democratic National Committee that will build capacity within our communities so that we have a seat at the table as these things are being adjudicated and our policies are being made. And so for me, my time is spent on capacity building. So I give a lot of money back to Morehouse. And if you're not building capacity and infrastructure, I'm not gonna really spend a whole lot of time kind of spending my time on it.
Oh, I love that. And you know, you're in my hometown, Houston. So I love what you're doing in Houston, and I love that you love Houston. And what a way to pay it forward. You mentioned some things about how you do this with your brothers. You know, it's a team of you that are doing this. So I can tell, you know, the value of community and the value of surrounding yourself around like-minded individuals like yourself. So congratulations on all your success with that. And I'm like, Ashley, show me the money. You know, this, I'm ready after this interview to set my appointment up with you to learn more about that. But I want to go back to Morehouse, because besides making all that money in the dorm room with the sandwiches and the haircuts, I know you have a lot of good memories. Now, one thing I'll tell everybody watching is when we moved off campus, Eric was my neighbor a couple of doors down. So I saw they were having some parties and having some good times. You know, we all had a lot of barbecue. Look, we had a whole street barbecue. Like we were really having a good time in college. So Eric, besides all the good times we had in Hateville, Georgia, I want to know, what was your favorite memory, if you had to choose just one that really stands out about your time at Morehouse?
Oh, there's no way I could pick one memory. I mean, Million Man March. I mean, going to Howard's homecoming, being backstage at Howard's homecoming. I mean, that tail end of Freaknik. I mean, there's just no way that the Cali picnics in the spring. I mean, there's just the warehouse freshman. I mean, there's no way to the Jamaica trip, senior class trip, right? There's just no way possible to choose one memory at all. What I can say is the one thing that the tie that binds, that keeps me coming to homecoming every year, is the brotherhood, right? I mean, literally our tent, like our class has literally 7 tents. If you look at everybody from our class, there are literally 7 tents at homecoming every year. And our tent is Thurman Hall 94. So we've literally, since we graduated, our freshman dorm has had a tent this whole time. And so it's that brotherhood and camaraderie is the one thing that I will say, if there's a through line for it, it is that. And the sisterhood, right? Because literally the Spellhouse connection is just, it is what it is, right? I mean, there's nothing like it. There's no duplicating it. And that's really the memories, right? That's where the memories are, those times, even the strain times that the schools have, even the strain times you have with people. It's a family, you have issues, but in the end, you're always going to close ranks when it's about the business.
Now, I don't know if this is a good question, but because it sounds like you almost answered it. You've had offers to Ivy League schools and you chose Morehouse. There are many students that may be watching today that are in the same position, and they want to know, why Morehouse? Why should I go there versus one of these other PWIs?
Yeah.
What would you tell them?
Again, go to places that celebrate you and not just tolerate you, that don't just bring you in as a token, that don't just bring you in to fill their diversity quota, who are essentially using you to give a more well-rounded experience to their other students, right? In the end, this is the time, if you just step back and let's get real scientific for it, right? I'm gonna put the doctor hat back on, right? So 18 to 22 is identity formation, right? Why would you spend your time at a place trying to fight and struggle and justify your being when you can go to a place where you can just be? I never thought about being Black during college. We just were. I didn't worry about looking around, and there was no Black person that didn't do whatever it is I could potentially conceive, whether somebody who was leaving school to go do it, somebody's parent. So it didn't matter, right? I could always look around, and it was one of the times where, and you don't realize it when you're going through it until you get out, that you could just be. And there's very few spaces for Black people in this country where we can just be. Those 4 years and then homecoming are the times where we can just be. We don't have to justify our existence to anyone else. And you can just look at people and nod, because we're all fighting the same battles, even if we're in different places or different professions. We all know what it's like to be out there in society, in the professional world, where we are justifying our existence and our right to just be a citizen. During those 4 years of college at an HBCU, you're not justifying anything but your own intelligence and figuring out who you want to be. That has nothing to do with your race necessarily. You can choose to be whatever it is you're going to be, the nerd, the jock, but you're not the Black nerd or the Black jock, because you got a bunch of other people the same as you. So you can form your identity in a way that is not juxtaposed with your race. And so when you do leave and everybody throws your race in your face, you already know who you are. You're not trying to then figure those two things out from an intersectionality standpoint. You know who you are. You had the time to explore those things. And now you can take that undergirding and then go out and then justify who you are racially. Yeah, you probably don't want to do it, but in the end, this world and society is going to make you do it. And so why not have that undergirding under you? You're not taking a step back from an academic standpoint. Look at the schools, look at where we send our students. You go, we're one of the top feeder schools to Ivy League schools, so you're not taking a back seat academically. So why don't you do something for yourself on a social level, on a moral level, on a personal level, that will undergird you for the rest of your life?
Woo, mic drop. You have said so many quotables that I know the comments are on fire. You are preaching, and I mean, hey, what you're saying is exactly right. It builds confidence, self-esteem. You're surrounded by like-minded individuals, and you go back to homecoming, and it's just like going home to visit your family. And speaking of family, I've been to this amazing tent that he has with his Morehouse roommate. And what's so unique about it, though, is they have their kids in the tent and an area for their kids to play. And Eric mentioned to me that his children have never missed a homecoming. And so tell us about, you're a proud father, of course, but tell us about the memories you're making with your kids at homecoming, and are they destined to follow this family legacy of going to an HBCU?
So it's interesting, right? My brother Sarkis Parker and his wife Keelani Combs Parker, who are also our classmates. Sarkis and I have been going to school together since second grade, right? And so when we say family, it's truly family. And thank God they're in Atlanta, so they give us a nice home base. But yeah, I mean, my kids, the third weekend in October, my kids know they're going down to Atlanta. Literally, so I missed the first tailgate in my life. I had to fly to LA. This past year, I had to fly to LA to speak at a conference. And so I flew down Thursday, did our parties Thursday, day party Friday, and I took a red eye to LA. My wife was like, Daddy's not going to be at tailgate. My kids were like, yeah, but we're going. So literally my wife and my kids were out there. I was not out there.
Oh, I love that.
It is an ingrained part of who it is and what we do in the family. And it like I said, I would say it's a year with two Christmases when we can go to homecoming, right? I mean, we go every year, but sadly we will not be. It is postponed for this year, but yes. And so ultimately, as what does the Bible say? You raise a child up in the way that you want them to go. I was indoctrinated. My sisters were indoctrinated. In the end, they can choose what they want. But when you juxtapose, and be clear, my wife went to Harvard, so we can juxtapose the Ivies and all of this, right? But I appreciate the fact that my wife dresses my children in Spelman gear. shoot, I appreciate the fact that my wife wears Spelman gear around Houston, right? And so she is on board with that plan, right? And so, you know, I give all props to her. She's been supportive of me in this process. My children could choose to do something else, absolutely. But in the end, they see how their parents interact with our friends. They see how all of us interact. They see, you know, doctors, lawyers, judges, like all of this stuff to them is just second nature. And to them, it would be a foreign concept not to go to a place that looked like an HBCU for college, if they decide to go to college, right? I'm not pushing, they may start a business, who knows, right? But yeah, I mean, in the end, I'm not forcing anybody to do anything, but you can indoctrinate, and there's nothing wrong with that.
So Eric, you've had such a rich experience at Morehouse, socially, academically, and even as an entrepreneur at Morehouse. If you had a chance to go back and do anything different, would you do anything different? And if so, what would that be?
Ooh, yeah, there are a couple of times where I probably behaved like I should not have behaved. I'd probably change that. I will keep the recipients of some of that. I wasn't too bad. I was lucky. My sister told me when I went there, do not go down there and show your behind, because you're going to be with these people for the rest of your life. But there are some youthful things that I did in terms of treating a couple of women. Just there are some behavioral things that I would change from a maturity standpoint. But otherwise, you know, I rode that joker till the wheels fell off. I'm not gonna lie to you. I had really no massive regrets. The only thing I might have done is I might have gone abroad. I was very parochial in terms of just hanging out in Atlanta and heading out in DC and going back to New York. And so the only thing I would say is I might have been a little bit more active, kind of maybe in student government, and then probably maybe a semester abroad if I had to do it over again, maybe. So those would be the only two things I might change, but that's about it. I really got my money's worth out of that.
Well, hey, it sounds like it was mutual. Morehouse got their money out of you because you're still donating, you're still giving back. It sounds like you'll be writing some checks to the AUC for your daughters, at least Spelman for sure. I know has to be on their list. But I'm just thinking, you mentioned that you have a podcast. Tell us more about the podcast, the name of it, and what you talk about on the podcast.
Oh, absolutely. And so bad thing is I haven't put an episode out in a while just because we've been so busy with our projects and then COVID hit. But so I'm down now to 1 day a week practicing medicine kind of clinically in the office. And so to give back to the profession, I created a physician services platform, right? What people may not realize is that I think physicians have the highest suicide rate of any profession. At least one physician kills themselves a day, every day. And so there's a lot of, and this is pre-COVID, right? And so there's a lot of pain in the medical community that people don't know anything about, don't really talk about. And so I created something called the Physician's Road, ROAD. And it's really kind of a life balance wheel. I'm very big into personal development. And so that platform is about 5 different kind of pathways. How do you build a life that where your ego is not tied to being a physician, right? We're proud to be physicians. It's a calling. But which oftentimes you see is people wrap their ego into being that. And the problem is physicians do not control the healthcare system. And so that lack of autonomy creates a lot of agita, let's just say. And so what I've tried to do is figure out how do you break your life into kind of 5 component parts, kind of the wealth accumulation. So if you can get financially independent, you're not worried so much about what's happening around you on the medicine side, around your money and your hours. The next thing is your practice, right? How do you do professional development in such a way that you can move through your career and it nourish you, not be hopping job to job to run away from people. Next would be health. So we're talking mind, body, spirit there. So we're talking, you know, I've had people come in and talk about physician marriages and talk about physician suicide and all those kinds of things. Next is relationships. And what I mean by relationships is that's external. So the external you and other people. So how do you navigate kind of non-physician peers who are telling you what to do, but they're not clinical, and the consternation around a lot of that. Then there's personal development, which is your internal relationship with yourself. Like how do you build around yourself in such a way that is nourishing? And again, that decoupling the ego from the profession from that standpoint. Did I get all 5? Relationships, health, personal development, and wealth. I think I got them. But if not, just go to the website, thephysiciansroad.com. And so the podcast is around those areas. So you have episodes under each of those different categories.
So Eric, we can find you at thephysiciansroads.com. Can you please share some other social media handles or
oh yeah, absolutely.
other places, LinkedIn, wherever we can go and find you, because you are a wealth of knowledge, and I'm sure people are going to follow you and continue to watch what you're doing next.
Yeah, so thephysiciansroad.com, so no S, road.com. There's a YouTube channel, the website actually has the podcast on there. You can find them on any of your podcast platforms, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play. And then the investment firm is Vernonville.com, and I'll spell that, VERNONVILLE.com. And honestly, if you just Google me, ERICTAIT, you'll find something, right? Because there's a bunch, I have a decent social media presence. And so you can always find me. Eric at Vernonville.com, Eric at thephysiciansroad.com comes directly to me. And so feel free to reach out for anything that you may need.
Well, Dr. Eric Tait, wow. From 1994, Morehouse College to MD to Houston to health is wealth, wealth is health, show me the money. I have learned so much about you during this interview, and you have such an inspiring story. And I'm just so proud to call you my Morehouse brother. Ashley and I are so proud to have you as a guest here today at HBCU Highlights. And what I love about your story the most is that it's an underlying theme through this interview, and it's just community. Like, you are about the community, your community as a doctor. You saw that there was a high suicide rate, so you basically created a solution, an avenue for doctors to learn about those 5 things that could make them better and prevent suicide. And then I love that as a community, you want to teach us about other ways to invest that aren't just stocks, and knowledge is power. So we've learned so much from you today. And I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to join us today for HBCU Highlights. For everyone watching, for more amazing interviews like this, you all can tune in to hbcuhighlights.com. Like, subscribe, and check out the podcast. But Dr. Eric Tait, thank you so much for joining us today.
No, thank both of you. I mean, Andrea, Ashley, you all creating platforms like this is so needed in our communities. And I am, this is a community, right? I go out of my way to use my classmates, people who look like us, for business, right? As I always say, you're my favorite IP attorney because literally we do business together, right? I try to walk the walk that I want to model for others. And these platforms where we can elevate our voices, I just appreciate you guys for creating it and highlighting us. And so thank you so much.
Thank you again.